Good morning. My name is Leslie Albee, and I am the IESA Volleyball Administrator, and I wanted to take an opportunity today to go through some of the changes for IESA Volleyball for this school year. In the next week or so, you should be getting the volleyball activity mailing. Included in that mailing are this printed booklet that has the activity update, the terms and conditions, and our definition of what the contrasting uniform requirement is in regards to the National Federation rules, and I will touch on that in a little bit. Also included in the mailing is the National Federation Volleyball Rules Book. Both of these documents should be given to the volleyball coach so they are aware of what these changes are. If you flip to the second page in the rules book, the National Federation has outlined their changes from last year to this year in the rules book, as well as included their points of emphasis. As they flip through the rules book, your coaches will see that the rules changes from the Federation are highlighted or shaded in gray. So please make sure that the activity mailing, while sent to the school administrator's attention, is given to the volleyball coach as soon as you receive it. I'm going to dive into some changes for the volleyball teams in regards to the IESA volleyball terms and conditions. First, the board of directors has removed the per day match limitation for schools. Previously, schools were allowed to participate in a maximum of 4 matches per day. That has been changed. There is no longer a match limitation per day. However, students are only allowed to participate in 9 sets per day. So if you are competing in a tournament and you're scheduled to play 5 matches on a Saturday, that is fine for the school to do that. However, any given student is only allowed to participate in 9 sets in any day. So whether it's a weeknight contest, a Saturday contest, if they are playing on the 7th grade and 8th grade team, if it's a tournament or if it's not a tournament, 9 sets per day is what students are allowed to participate in. For regional and sectional hosts, the board of directors has approved, if you choose to use line judges are now going to be an allowable expenditure on the financial report form up to $20 per line judge per match. And the other clarification in our exceptions to the National Federation rules is in reference to legal numbers. Numbers 0 through 99 on a jersey are legal. If it is a number of 00, 01, 02, 03, all the way up to 09, those are not considered legal numbers. So please make sure that your uniforms are in compliance. In addition to uniform compliance, the Federation has removed the solid colored uniform requirement, but actually just changed it to the contrasting uniform requirement. I would think that most schools are already in compliance with this because going to the contrasting uniform requirement has eased up some of the requirements that had been in place with the solid colored uniform. But ultimately, in your activity mailing on the back page, we have spelled out what a contrasting uniform is. At the bottom of this page, you'll see 3 different color groups that officials have already been made aware of, and the color groups define which colors would not be considered contrasting. So, for example, if you have a libero on your team, the libero or the other teammates, their jerseys need to contrast from each other so it's clear who the libero is. If your 5 teammates on the floor are wearing black jerseys, dark gray would not be considered a contrasting uniform color for the libero to wear. So please make sure you take a look at what those contrasting uniform requirements are. You take a look at the non-contrasting color groups. If you have a question about your uniforms, please make sure you send those directly to me, and I can work with the school athletic director or administrator to make sure that those are in compliance. Also, looking ahead to the next couple of years, the National Federation is going to be making a change to the jersey number requirements, and that number requirement is that the body of the uniform number has to contrast from the color of the jersey. So previously, if you had a black jersey and a dark gray number, but you had a white trim around the number, that contrasted and met the requirement for the numbers. Now the actual number itself has to contrast from the color of the jersey. So again, you'll want to consult the activity mailing, take a look online at what our contrasting color groups or the non-contrasting color groups are, and make sure that your jerseys and their numbers are in compliance. Contrasting uniform requirement is in place now. The contrasting jersey number requirement will not be in place for a couple of years. But if you are planning ahead for ordering uniforms in the next 3 years, you'll want to take a look at that. I'm going to switch gears and talk about IESA Handbook changes that pertain to volleyball. First are transfers. And if you have a student who has transferred once the IESA start date for an activity has passed, they are not eligible to participate in that IESA activity. So, for example, volleyball practices and tryouts can begin on Monday, December 2nd. Once that date has hit, any students who transfer to your school, which means they started at one school at the beginning of the school year and they are now transferring to your school, would not be eligible to participate on your volleyball team. That is a major change from last year to this year, so please make sure that students who are on your team meet that requirement. So if they transfer, for example, on December 5th and they want to be part of your school's volleyball team, they are not permitted to do so because we have already hit the start date for the activity, which was December 2nd. If you have questions about the transfer bylaw, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office so that we can make sure that your students are eligible if they want to compete on a team. Second, just a clarification for students who have been retained. If you have a student who was in 6th grade last year and played on your 7th grade volleyball team, and they have been retained in 6th grade this year, they are not eligible to participate in volleyball until they have been promoted to the 7th grade. They would be eligible to participate in any activity they didn't participate in as a 6th grader. Next would be roster omissions. We're going to talk in a little bit about regional entry forms and your rosters being due. If there was an administrative or clerical error in that a student was left off, the school administration may petition the IESA executive director to add in a student after that deadline has passed. If you run into that situation, please don't hesitate to contact our office. Our points of emphasis for IESA volleyball, we do have 4 of them. First point of emphasis, the roster must be provided by the head coach to the R2 at the pre-match conference. This is an NFHS rules change, so please make sure that coaches are aware of this. The lineup can still be submitted 2 minutes before the end of the warm-ups. All regular season contests, including tournaments, need to be listed in the season schedule. So I'm going to start sending out emails to schools to make sure that the season schedule is submitted by the end of this year. And when that is done, you should list all regular season contests, weeknight games, Saturday games. If you're in a tournament, all of those need to be listed in your 7th grade schedule and in your 8th grade schedule if you're competing at both levels. If you're competing in a tournament and you don't know who your opponents are yet, you can go ahead and just put in the name of the tournament, opponent TBD, and once you have played those contests or you know who your opponent is, you can go back in and edit the schedule when you update the results of those contests. We already talked about line judges being an allowable expenditure on the financial report for regional and sectional hosts. Just to clarify, you are not required to use line judges, but if you choose to, that allowable expenditure is on the financial report form. And last is regarding the solid colored uniform requirement, which I talked about earlier. If you have a question about whether or not your uniforms meet the contrasting uniform requirement, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am happy to take a look at pictures of the uniforms you have and let you know if those are in compliance or not. Those emails should come from the school administration, so I'm making sure that those individuals who may be in charge of replacing uniforms are in the loop with those conversations. Couple of dates to keep in mind as we wrap up here. Volleyball can start on Monday, December 2nd. That's when practices and tryouts can begin. Games may begin on January 6th. that is also when your season schedule is due. So if you already have your season schedule prepared, you can go ahead and enter your 7th grade schedule. And once your 7th grade schedule is entered online, and then you go to the 8th grade side, you can choose to import your 7th grade schedule and then make any adjustments that might be needed. The online roster deadline for 7th grade is February 18th, and the online roster deadline for 8th grade is February 25th. So please make sure that you are aware of those deadlines, put them in your calendar. When you submit your roster, you'll need to include jersey numbers, positions, first and last names of students, and dates of birth. So that information can be gathered as soon as you know who is on your team. And one of the questions that I often get are, when are the regional assignments going to be posted? I am working on those right now. Those should be posted online, and I will notify schools when they are posted, but that should be no later than December 2nd. If you have any questions as your season begins or once you're in season, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact our office, contact me directly as I oversee volleyball. If you have a question about whether or not an official is licensed, school administrators, you can always go online into your member center and search for an official to make sure that you do have 2 licensed officials for every match that you are using. And if there's a question about whether or not an official is licensed, again, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help. We wish you the best as you start your 2019-20 season.